Welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. So these are just some of the few projects, modified gear that I wish I bought used back then. This could be like half a year ago, 20, 25 years, I don't know. These are some pretty interesting projects. One of my friends, near friends, had some kind of a bel canto DAC. I'm not sure. I don't think it's the 2.5, but I think it's around the 2.0 version. And I think it looked something like this inside. I remember listening to it before it got modified and then after. And I have to say that I was very impressed that Class D equipment could actually sound as good as it did before, but especially after he tweaked it. It really got a hell of a lot more personality, and there just wasn't this, like I've written here, digital, vague, polite type of sound that you usually associate with Class D. So it was very interesting, and I was so close to really considering buying that piece of gear, but it was a bit too much money for me, and oddly enough, one of my other friends ended up buying it, and we tried it in his system, and it sounded, above average, but it actually didn't sound nearly as good, and I think it's just a pairing thing. It didn't really have the paired bel canto pieces of gear amplifier, so that was also a bit funny, a bit weird. So here's another situation, and this is just a random picture that I've picked on the internet. My friend had a Aquaface DAC. I'm not sure which one it was. It was one of the first ones they made, and I was really surprised. I think that was the first time I actually heard Aquaface. I think so. And he had modified it. I'm not sure what he did exactly with it, but I was impressed. I was impressed. And this was only like 6 years ago. I'm not sure. But that was really good. That was really good. And I when I listened to that Aquaface sound, I really got it. Like, yeah, now I get it. Now I get why Aquaface is so expensive and why so many people consider it like one of the better brands in the world. Like, because of that sound that I heard. And he was really good at setting things up so you hear the intended sound plus a bit extra because he modified it. So it was just so creamy and lush, and I think there are a lot of experiences like that on the market where you get some vintage gear and you just set it up just right, so you get that sound that I think a lot of people really like, that really lush, creamy, rich sound with some kind of a certain view, certain angle on the sound that was actually very fascinating structurally. So this surprised me. I think it was only like a DAC from 1995, or I can't remember, but fascinating, really fascinating. That was one of the few times where I thought, damn, I wish I bought that. I wish I bought that Aquaface DAC that he had modified. But again, I was limited with the amount of money that I had. Then I also, at this same friend's place, heard a Pioneer speaker, Pioneer TAD speaker. And I think this is the model, I'm not exactly sure, 1EX or something like that. It sounded amazing. Again, I don't know what it is with this guy, but the combination of cables, preamp, power amp, his room, DAC, everything, it just brought the best out of these speakers. And the sound was just so crisp and reactive and fast. This was some of the fastest membrane movement I've heard for quite a while. But yeah, I could hear that it wasn't perfect, but my God, did it sound amazing, amazing. I haven't heard Pioneer TAD speakers many places. I've actually only heard it about 4 different places, but there is a lot of potential there, without a doubt. A lot of potential, but I wouldn't, go out on a limb and say it's on the level of the best monitor audio or Canton speakers. I don't think it really is, but I still think it's pretty damn good. And yeah, it's a bit pricey, so I can't really say that it's good value money, but impressive. I usually just don't associate Pioneer with good sound, but this Pioneer TAD speaker had fascinating, interesting detail, and I think that a lot of modern speakers could get up to this level. I really think so. But that was fascinating, For a short while, I wished that, wow, I really need that, But then I heard it at a friend's place, another friend that bought it from him, and I was just shocked how bad it was. Like, totally opposite type of sound. Totally different room, DAC, amp. The bass was just gone. There was no mid-range. Mid-range was all over the place. It's just, that was so weird, I just went from like some of the best sound that I've heard. Not quite the best sound, but some really good sound that I've heard there, to some really basic crap sound that could have been any speaker brand. I was just shocked. Like, is this the same speaker? Like, I just couldn't believe it. Such a weird experience. And I remember carrying these speakers up the stairs for like, it was like 5 stories up there, in my own car, and my God, man, it almost broke my back carrying these speakers up. They were really, really heavy. But yeah, fascinating. Then I heard this thing here, this JJ 828 amp, weird name. I heard this again at the same friend's place that had this amazing sound, and he had this Verity Sarastro speaker, amazing speaker, and then used this piece of gear, which is nowhere near the same quality of sound, but with this speaker there was just so much detail, so much life, so much micro and macro movement, and then connecting it with this thing here, which was just so much lower in quality, somehow still sounded like really impressive. I could hear that it wasn't the best gear in the world, but I mean, I could have bought this here for like $1,000, where it was, I think it was about $1,000. I'm not sure. And it was just slightly modified. I think it had better tubes in it, and then like 1 or 2 caps replaced. I can't really remember, but the bass response was really impressive. And I heard some Via Candias and some Joe Bonamassa on it. Just the bass response was just amazing, And I don't know, if I had bought it, I would probably have heard a lot of other mistakes with the sound. I know that these aren't built very well for being modified, and that a lot of people who have modified them have had problems, mechanical problems with them. But there was a lot of potential just doing a certain type of tube sound that was typically, up there with, the Macintosh MC275 and a lot of other more expensive amplifiers, I mean, yeah, it wasn't really that class of amp, but I mean, it was like a fraction of that price. So I kind of wish that for a small period of time had that type of sound. It was a very creamy, heavy, like this very forceful bass in it that really, yeah, it just really grabbed my attention. Yeah, not a perfect signature. It had its flaws here and there, but fascinating, fascinating, price wise at least. And then I've heard some few do-it-yourself tube amplifiers, and I have to say that there are some few do-it-yourself tube amplifiers that don't use conventional designs, conventional parts, that are just on a whole other level. And yeah, I know that I've said that the audio notes, what's it called, Tonmeister, Maisho, Phono, Silver Signature, whatever it's called, that's the best tube amplifier. Yeah, it's the best in the stores, but I have heard some other tube amplifiers that you couldn't buy in the stores that had, I would say, certain small parts of the detail that were better. And small parts here and there from this guy, that guy. And it just amazed me, like wow. Especially when you get into a world that not a lot of people are aware of. This 100% really high quality silver designs on 300B tube amps. There are some few people in this world that are extremely good, that do not have a store, they do not sell any products, they just do this for their own sake. They probably have like a lifelong ambition on making some really crazy good tube amp, and I've heard those few amps. They really amazed me. There was this one guy, actually one of my friends bought a one of these silver tube amps with everything was silver inside, and actually the tubes weren't that great, just pretty basic tubes in it. And it's just, when I heard that, it just almost fell apart. Mentally, just almost stood there sobbing. I had to kind of, pull myself together. It's like, you're not gonna cry at your friend's place. It's just, it was just so emotionally like on such a deep level that you just almost never hear in the stores. I mean, even with a lot of expensive audio gear, typically there's a sort of tameness, reservation, coolness about the sound, to kind of keep it safe. But I was listening to a sort of, I would call it more frail, emotionally frail type of sound. Yeah, structurally it wasn't as good as a lot of stuff in the stores, but my God, emotionally it just blew me away. Some of the imaging, the layering, the movements. There were parts of the sound where you just thought that, wow, this is it. This is the amp that all people in the world should own. But, it only got made once with some rare parts. And I actually heard this a couple of times. I think I heard it like 2 times at different people's places in different countries, and I just wanted to share that with you guys, that it is something that exists. You almost never hear it in your life, and I would say that typically it is 300B tube amps. I made a video about it recently. The highest quality sound across the brands, something like that. And there's just something about 300B tube amplifier, something about the emotional response, the movement, the flow, that can sometimes, on some amps, get into like a really rare detail that you almost never hear. Like, I also remember another guy, yeah, good, I remember this. Another guy, he made some 300B tube amps. Also, I think it was mostly in silver parts. I can't remember. Another guy, and it was just like, I was listening to this song, and I was just in shock over the tonality of the instruments. I was just like the instruments. It was like this is so unreal, you know. Like, we gotta make more of these. We gotta, you know, make a brand. We gotta sell these in the stores. And then he showed me what parts were in it. I'm not gonna reveal those parts, but and then he showed me what those parts they would cost. And I was like, yeah, okay, I get it why you can't make a product out of this. So he had apparently used, I think, about 20,000 US dollars on just the parts alone. And those parts weren't parts that you could ever get again. Those were expired, I wouldn't call it expired, but old parts that got thrown away from all kinds of places. So he had been collecting all of these parts from different places in the world, from different manufacturers, and these were like really rare parts that you couldn't get a hold of anymore. And I was just, you know, in shock, just like seriously, dude, I gotta get a hold of this sound. There's just some parts of the detail in regards to especially the instruments where it just sounded almost as real as possible. You know, there was a sort of vibrancy to the instruments, the way that they were plucking the instruments, and it's just so scary, the intensity of that sound. You could hear the intention of the artist and the intimacy. It was just completely locked. I was just, oh God, I gotta get this type of sound, you know. But yeah, I don't even think he has that amplifier anymore. I think he sold it to some friend for like half the price of what it cost to build it. Oh, painful to watch. But sometimes you do get that type of sound, and yeah, I just wanted to make this video to say that, oh, I really wish I had some money at that time to buy that piece of gear. That was like, you know, a piece of history where you took a picture of a situation where you're never gonna see that part of the detail ever again. It was just like that sound, you know, that sound, you know. Oh yeah. Yeah, but it was like an out of body experience. It really was. And I think that just generally 300B tube amplifiers, they do parts of the detail that can really mesmerize you. Yeah, so you feel like you're falling in love for the first time. And I've actually heard this thing here a couple of times. Ear 8L6 amplifier and a Coot CD player. I've heard them as standard units. And man, was I close to buying this. This was some of the, I would say some of the best gear that I've heard for a, I wouldn't call it a good value price, but like a reasonable, okay price. And I had the opportunity to buy this as demo gear for about half price, and I was just like, oh god damn it, you know, it's just above the price point that I could afford. But again, there was something about the whole atmosphere and mood, and you could just feel that the way that this unit clicked with this was just so special, you know. I think you get a lot of these types of experiences in the hi-fi world once you get up in that exclusive price category and you listen to their, you know, their in-house sound with their in-house amplifier, and CD player and DAC and whatever, and you get up to these crazy prices. I just felt like, wow, here I actually had a chance of getting really good gear for like half price, or perhaps a third of a price of if it was some other random exclusive brand. So, but yeah, here's the point. I also heard it with improved tubes and some slight upgrades. I don't know what upgrades were made on this gear, but I'm just saying, when you go away from these standard tubes here, standard tube inside of this thing, and some other small upgrades that you possibly could make, it just takes this sort of curtain that's on the sound, that's kind of romanticizing and keeping a bit shrunken, and it just kind of reveals, lets that curtain disappear, so the sound stage just goes like whoop, like 1.5 times bigger. And I just felt like it was just more evolved, but in a good, originally intended type of sound, type of way, if you could say that, So yeah, I missed out on this. Damn, So I wish I could kind of turn back time and get back to that sound. But again, am I romanticizing? Yeah, probably. That there are, regrets we have in our life where we kind of look at something that was in the past and perhaps romanticize a bit too much over it. Kind of mentally telling ourselves it was better than it really was. But yeah, it was definitely good. Had a lot of really good qualities to it. Yeah. But I also got to hear some few brands, actually low quality brands, where it was converted from a Class AB watts design into a Class A design. And some of those times, I don't remember what models of what brands it were, but it had a certain appeal to it where you just felt like, why do a lot of these brands don't just do this, And I get the feeling that it has a lot to do with being able to run a piece of gear for a long period of time without anything burning, becoming too hot, or becoming a liability. And I think that it's a pity, because there really are some few people out there that can do this, that can take some few models from some brands, and then they can just sort of flip the sound only by turning it from a Class AB design into a Class A design. I've heard it like 5 times, I think so. And it amazed me. I was like, wow, yes, finally it's releasing. Finally it's more natural. Finally it's a bit more warm. I was like, wow, yeah, cool. So that could be really cool, experiencing that again. And yeah, I heard these modified power bars where people just put some proper plugs and proper cables in it, and it was just like the right mixture of parts, and then they probably, I don't know, changed a cap here or there, or a resistor or whatever, and it's like wow, suddenly the whole imaging isn't over there by the speaker, so many feet away, like you looking through binoculars. Suddenly you feel like you're almost on stage with the artist, and suddenly it's like, wow, 2.5 times more bass, but good bass. So that also kind of made me dream up a lot of projects that I haven't really had the time and money to look into. But I'm just telling you guys, there are some power bars out there that are actually pretty crappy, but have a lot of potential. one of my friends did this. I showed this in a recent video. He had a Syndac power bar, and by default, he said that it sounded pretty bad. But he then went through this really long process that took probably like a whole year of putting some, I don't know, Furutech V-Ball plugs, and he dampened some cables, changed some cables to like a much higher class. And he said, it went from being way below gigawatt to sounding a lot better than a good gigawatt power bar costing $1,500 or something like that, And we're talking about a Syndac box that probably only cost like $300 new. So for that to happen, that's actually very, very impressive. I haven't heard it myself, but this is just what one of my friends told me. I also had the rare opportunity to hear this thing here. I actually heard it as a standard Macintosh MA6500. I heard it just before I bought my own 6900. And, I was unimpressed with it before I bought my 6900. I had to go up to 6900 before I thought that, like, wow, Macintosh is good. You got that certainty, you got that firm sound together with some warmness, and you just don't feel this sort of frail, uncertain, loose in the middle type of sound. It just felt like there was some proper heft to this. But complete mindfuck. Sorry, guys. Then it flipped. Then after I bought this thing, then I got to hear this thing modified. And the guy who modified it, I have no idea what he did. But he was obviously extremely talented because he did everything just right, sound-wise. So it totally annihilated my MA6900, that default MA6900 sound. It just sounded a lot more, what do you call it? Truly analog and deep and stable and lush. It sounded like one of the older Macintosh amps from the olden days. One of the better ones from probably, I don't know, the 80s or something like that. Like if you took one of those amps and you perhaps made it just a tiny bit better, it sounded like one of those. So you didn't have this sort of modern, separated, linear, I don't care about you type of sound. It was like, wow, fantastic upgrade. And personally, me having had a MA6900 and having had it in several steps upgraded, I was like, wow, you actually made an upgrade that didn't destroy the sound. Well done, well done. When you can do stuff like that, then you're pretty talented, Mine got improved, but we took it to a level where, yeah, we kind of half destroyed the sound. So it was improved in some ways, but it just kind of, went away from its original sound. So overall, I just got tired of it and had to sell it. But yeah, interesting. So it can be done if you're extremely smart. And then I also had the opportunity to listen to some vintage models of Yamaha and Sensory. Yeah, I heard some that were not just restored, but and those sounded really good. The original ones sounded vague, thin, noisy. Then it got restored. Suddenly there was just a lot more power, heft, control. It was sort of more creamy. And then I also got to hear them where they got improved, where they put some better parts in them. And yeah, I would say mostly the sound overall got improved, but I could still hear that, there's still a long way to go from these even the best models of Sensory and Yamaha back then, probably from the 80s, I don't know, 90s. There's still a long way to go from that sound that they made back then to the better amplifiers from nowadays, you know. But it just had some really interesting qualities to it. And yeah, it cost a lot of money, as you can see here. We also, me and some of my friends back then found some older headphone amplifiers, some older top models, and yeah, you have to know that there is a lot of potential in a lot of older headphone amplifiers that a lot of people nowadays don't consider to be really good. Headphone amplifiers that probably are, I don't know, 25, 15, 10 years old, that nowadays only cost like a third of the price or a fourth of the price used. And not all of them, but some of them, they have a lot of upgrade opportunity. So you can, usually I would guess, this is just me guessing, but putting about $1,000 to $2,000 of parts in them can many times give you a lot of really good sound, and then you'll probably have to pay like at least $1,000 on getting the guy to do it, the technician. But I'm just saying, I've heard some of those older headphone amplifiers completely destroy a lot of the newer ones that cost so much more, that still are pretty good. But yeah, it's also changed a lot. You know, a lot of headphone amplifiers just cost a lot more than they did back then. So I don't really know why that is, but I just think that generally the industry doesn't sell a lot of headphone amplifiers that is, you know, at the mid to high level. So yeah. And I also had the fortunate time to spend with some few people that were basically retired, that were sort of beaten up but by their jobs, but had like a lifelong dream of making, you know, this speaker or that speaker. And a lot of them, they would make, you know, Avalon copies or Wilson Audio copies, or even Bowes and Wilkins copies of speakers, and some other brands. And it was just, I heard some of these speakers and I was like, wow, you know, there's just so much more body and heft and substance in the sound from a lot of these projects. And yeah, you know, you kind of expect that to happen when they use parts like Duolun and Mundorf and just extremely expensive parts. But I got to hear some of those projects, and I wish that a lot of people could get to experience that, because that's pretty rare. That's pretty rare. So yeah, having said that, these are some of the few really good experiences that I had, and I hope you guys liked it. Like and subscribe if you can.